changing lives out here. Is that the plan? I am Jeanette Cheah, and I am not a designer, but I can see that there are very well-dressed and intelligent people in this room, so clearly lots of designers in the audience, which is why I want to immediately ask you, what would you have done in this situation? Let me just set the scene for you for a second. As Berlin mentioned, I'm an ed tech founder. We're working in 2017, taking students to Silicon Valley, to Singapore, and teaching them all about innovation, how to start their own startup from idea to pitch in 2 weeks, and then they get a wonderful academic credit at the end of it. So that was our work. Excuse me while I get that back where it all started. We can see we were taking them to these great places, and we were getting really confident in 2019. Everything's going really well. We are working with universities all around Australia and around the world, and we've got thousands of kids coming through our programs, and it's feeling good. And then the world changed. And everybody has a COVID story. Mine's not special. But I do want to share the fact that we were 3 days away from flying out to Austin, Texas to go to South by Southwest. And we were actually commissioned by the Victorian government to run a party, which was going to be like an Aussie recovery party with alcoholic ice cream and puppy dogs and Australian bamboo pajamas and Aussie musicians. And it was going to be like a career highlight. Don't tell me you didn't want to be at that party. And 3 days out, the borders closed and everybody cried. I'm sure we all cried. So here's the situation I was talking about. We had 1 month runway, and by that I mean enough money for 1 more month in the bank. I had 7 staff and no foreseeable income coming in at all in the future. These 7 people were relying on me to pay their bills, pay their rent, eat their food. Meanwhile, the universities that we worked with are under pressure because they're struggling too. Students all around the world were freaking out, trying to do their work from their bedrooms. And then JobKeeper was announced, and we're like, oh, that's kind of a nice thing, thanks. So what are the options at this point? I got to say, I felt kind of like I was in a German prison. There was scarcity, there was urgency, and there was an intense perspective shift. Do we just shut the business down? Do we take 6 months off and just take that JobKeeper money for 6 months? Do I roll off every staff except for 2? I'm going to let you think about that and what you would have done while I introduce myself briefly. So I was born to Chinese Malaysian parents in Honolulu, Hawaii, and spent my childhood a little bit in America, a little bit in Singapore, Malaysia, before moving to Turrbal Land in Brisbane, and now I live in Brunswick on Wurundjeri land. And I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land, where innovation, creativity, and storytelling has happened for thousands of years, and we are here just to build on that tradition. I also want to tell you a little bit about what brought me to this stage and brought me to my career. And it's actually a bunch of really kind of boring, similar-looking logos. Lots of acronyms up there. And I was a very good girl. I went to uni, I did economics, and I worked in financial services in corporate Australia for about 14 years. But I had this knack of being in the right place at the wrong time. So for example, might date myself a bit here, at AXA I was working in investments and superannuation and protected products at the time the GFC hit. So we were trying to get retirees to lock in their money, and then they had no money. Similar at AMP, that was the same kind of time. At Origin Energy, I was working there at the time the carbon tax was put in place, and then repealed, and then put back in place, and I can't even remember what happened at that point. If anyone else remembers, remind me later. And then at ANZ, I worked in their financial planning and innovation kind of team, around the time the Royal Commission into Financial Planners came about. So I've done well so far. Got a reputation as the person that would like to jump on grenades. And then I was running a travel-based education company the time the borders closed. So super fun time for me. I also remember very clearly the young girl who was going to become the Jeanette that's on stage today. And she looked a bit like this. So when Jeanette, at the age of, I think she's about 14, 15 in that picture, I'm not sure. The brace is probably dated. But I remember very clearly being a teenager, being in year 9, and having to choose my electives for school. And I remember so clearly this pain, thinking that if I picked the wrong electives, I was going to influence my VCE choices, which was going to wreck my prerequisites for uni, which was then going to stuff up my entire career, which meant I was going to be like a complete failure, and why can't you pick this elective at the age of 14? Because that's going to tell me the rest of your life. Does anyone else remember that pressure as a child? Give me some hands, give me some hands. Yes, yeah, and this is what we do to kids at 14. We tell them that there is a linear pathway to success. We tell them that there is one way to be successful. You know, you have to make the right choices. I remember one person I worked with named Jesse, he said, Jeanette, I reckon that there's a finite steps between who I am today and Elon Musk, and I've already made the wrong decision, so I'm just going to give up. This is before Elon Musk was like, you know, cancelled. Don't tell Elon I said that. Okay. So we tell kids and we tell people that education is linear. We tell people that you have this pathway. But the future is exponential. And it is just so exciting that we see all of these incredible changes just in the last few months. What's going on with generative AI? We saw the rise, fall, rise again of crypto. Like, things are just moving like this. And it is just this rate of increase, something becoming faster and faster and faster. And yet at school, things are the same. Uni degrees are mostly the same. There's some innovators out there, but there's a lot of people just kind of like doing the same content that they were 10 years ago. How many of you did it, like, learnt from a marketing textbook that was 50 years old? You know? How many of you? Yeah, I see that one hand over there. Yeah, I feel you. We're still learning Porter's 5 forces. It's fine. Like, that's all okay. But I think that what we're teaching and how we work leaves this a massive opportunity gap here. And that's why at Hex and with the work that I do with my team, we've been working on how do we define the exponential opportunity that we all have. So this is the simple way I'll explain it. So we've got IQ, how smart you are. It's your, you know, the IQ test, do you belong in Mensa? Are you a clever person, like inherently intelligent? We all pretty much know that metric. And then we talk about EQ, like he's got great EQ, or she's wonderful at EQ, or they really understand people, or they're great with people. I think we now hire for EQ. You might be looking around your team saying, we need someone who's got better EQ in the accounts department because they're dealing with clients. So we're all pretty familiar with that. And I really, really want to introduce this concept and invite you to join me in bringing to life XQ, because I think this is something that is going to really set each of you up for amazing leadership success going forward. And it's in the title of the program, so it's not a mystery, but we believe XQ, being exponential intelligence, should be and will be the next measure of who is going to become an amazing future leader, who is going to be that person that can get you out of the sticky situations, who's going to be the people that can turn your business around, your team around, who's the person people will look to for leadership in times of rapid change. And I think that each one of you could be one of those people. Big reveal, exponential intelligence. This is the word that we want to get out there. And you'll notice there's a little TM up there because we have successfully trademarked it. So that's a nice Australian trademark for exponential intelligence. And what we've done is through our earned insights, so we've worked with literally thousands of students over the years, and we've started to measure the things that they were and the things that they became. And we started to think about when they were in, say, Silicon Valley, starting a startup from nothing to something, what were the traits that they exhibited? How did they think? How did they behave? How did they act? And harking back to the 14-year-old Jeanette, who had no idea what she wanted to be when she grew up and still kind of doesn't, I think she would have felt a lot of comfort in the fact that the XQ metrics are more about capabilities and not about a job title. We are not in the business, and I don't believe any of us should be in the business of training ourselves or the next person around us for a new job title. We need to be training ourselves to have a set of capabilities that means that we are going to be able to take this anywhere we go. So Mindsets. We talk about mindsets. We talk about being curious, being abundant, adaptive, all of the good words. And you'll notice also purpose-led, community-focused, things that I think everyone in this room already is. And then we talk about the skill sets. So this is the practical stuff that you know how to do. So can you network? That's a really practical skill set. Can you verbally communicate or communicate in some other way? Do you have self-leadership as a skill set? Can you actually reflect in on yourself and lead yourself? Do you have a little bit of grit? At Hex, we talk about grit as being we don't fall down, we fall forward. And finally, there's tool sets. I saw the phones go off, that's cool. This is the stuff that actually makes me feel really happy, guys. I'm sorry about all the words. We can send it to you later. But this is the tools that you know how to use. And you'll notice I don't have anything up there about you need to code Python or you need to know how to use Jira or whatever it might be. It's more about the tools that will continue to evolve and exist. We talk about tech fluency. Do you just have the ability to self-teach when something has to happen? Can you ask the right questions of the AI? Can you figure out just how to take your video from here to here? You'll notice self-care as a tool set, because I think future leaders need to be able to self-care. They need to be able to self-soothe, recognise what's needed for mental health, recognise what we need to do to fill our own cups before we go out and try to change the world. And you'll also notice a few things like making and breaking, and risk assessment. Can we make really good assessments quickly about how risky is a new activity? This doesn't mean that we have to do all the risky things. It just means having an appetite for risk and an ability to kind of assess it really quickly. So, 30 attributes that we have created based on research from thousands of students, and 30 things that I believe are all teachable. If you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, I don't have the exploratory mindset, I think you can teach that. If you're looking at it thinking you're not very strategic, I think it's all teachable. And in fact, groups like the World Economic Forum, they put out what they think are the skills of the future, and we kind of mapped it across to what we were looking at, and they're just missing the whole mindsets piece. So someone told the World Economic Forum that they're wrong, and that they should be thinking about not just what you can do and the tools that you can use, but also how do you think? How does your brain kind of work? What are those neural pathways that we kind of go through? And I'll just share a little bit about why I'm excited about this. I think you can probably guess. That first of all, it opens up a whole opportunity for new education standards. So we can actually put XQ-related stuff into high schools, into universities, and into professional development courses. And in fact, we're already doing that at high schools where we're teaching future-led skills to year 9s, year 10s. It's not to get them to a particular job title, once again. It's about can they scan the future for the trends that they might be leading into. Imagine if you went to university and you actually got a whole set of just generalist XQ skills, because honestly, that's what we need. Because there's no point teaching you a particular, we can teach you a coding language, sure, but that's going to change in 6 months or 3 months. So it's how do you adapt to the new stuff? I'm really excited about it for talent sourcing as well, because we can sit in those hiring booths and say, actually, we need some more XQ in this team. Or that person's got all the right skills, but do they have the right mindsets? How's their XQ? And I know we've got some consulting folk in the room. I want to see this rolling out across all of your client work at some point in the future, because I genuinely think it's going to make your clients more excited about the teams that they put together and the way that they train internally and the way that they bring things to life. And of course, there's new ways of working. We're all familiar with the concept of, DAOs have come to the fore, where you're bringing in disparate global groups of people from around the world to do work on Discord, and it's all funded by someone on cryptocurrency, and they're communicating on Twitter, and then all of a sudden they disperse, and it's not hierarchical, and everyone just comes in with their own skills. How are we training young people and the people in this room to work in a world where a DAO career might actually be their future career? How are we training people for the fact that you're going to come together in a group, do something and disperse, and there's no manager, there's no project lead? That's going to be like some of us are going to be in that future of work. So thinking about how can we bring that into the way we train. And also, if you start to get familiar with your own XQ, I think you can actually start to better communicate your leadership superpowers. You can confidently walk into a room and say, you know what, I've got some amazing futurist mindsets, and I can bring this into this team. So I think it's a really great internal measure as well to see how we can smash it. At the end of the day, XQ is the difference between a slow corporate and a startup. It's the difference between a bystander and a change maker, an employee and, an entrepreneur, potentially. And it's also the difference between doing it alone and doing it with friends, because XQ inherently is a community-based and like a team-based thing. This is a very ugly slide, I'm so sorry. But essentially, I'm also really excited about it because there's some great stats out there that say that tomorrow's economic challenges, there's so many economic challenges out there, but we can design opportunities for them using XQ. Like we look at the fact that 40% of CEOs think their organisations won't be economically viable in 10 years. What's going to fix that? Teams with great XQ. 1 in 5 Australian businesses are facing skills shortages. We can fix that through training better XQ at high school and university or at TAFE or whatever education is out there. And I think really amazingly, 40% of graduates say that uni didn't prepare them for work, because you get out of uni or you get out of higher education or whatever education you had and you land and work, and that's where you learn all your actually useful skills. Yeah, I see some nods to that one, probably from hiring managers as well. And I mean, just a little example, right? This is a fairly old grab from all of the things when we first started seeing these images. But you see straight away, the narrative comes up being that it's creepy, it's unusual, it's uncomfortable. And I agree, right? Some of these new technologies can be really scary. And I think the reaction that we see to things like this, so for example, in our world, some universities, not all of them, have banned ChatGPT. Just banned it. Just no, we're not going to deal with this. It's too hard. We're just going to put it on lockdown. And I would argue that that is the opposite of XQ. That's I don't know if you can make the curve go the other way, but I think that that is the opposite of XQ. Whereas you see others who are thinking how do we use this new technology to actually teach students how to interrogate it, interact with it? And I think that is a great example of XQ. Also, MC before with her presentation, talking about how to think about adaptive tech, great XQ. And I mean, things are changing so fast. It's only been since 2020 that we've had Tesla as a brand, or 3D printing, or lab-grown meats. It's not that long ago. And in terms of thinking what's next on the curve and how fast things are coming, it excites me, it scares me, but I just want us to be ready. I want us to be ready to get out there and grab it, because we don't know what the future's going to look like, but we need to have the skills, the capabilities, the mindsets to think about whether we're the person who can step into those shoes. What happens if rich lifestyles are democratized? For example, electric vehicles. That's a rich lifestyle thing right now. But what happens if that's democratized across the 7 billion plus people around the world? What does that do to the energy grids? What does that do to the way that we organize our roads? What does it do to the way we store vehicles? If you start to think about these trends, if institutional structures are reinvented like the world of work, if technology outpaces ethics, which I think it is outpacing ethics, we've got some people agreeing to that for sure. And also, what if pop culture ideas become a reality? I think if we all look back to the Star Trek iPad thing, where Captain Picard had an iPad in the 70s and just spoke to the ship, that was amazing sci-fi. And there's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on our pop culture right now that I think, what happens if that becomes a reality? Is Dune current pop culture? I'm not even sure. I'm not cool enough anymore. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. What if that becomes a reality? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to share 3 very short examples of when XQ lit up for me, right? So there was this time when I was 24. I was working at one of the big logos, and this one's still pretty tough. I thought I was a really integral part of that team, and we were going through acquisition conversations with another big logo. And one day, my boss came back into the office and he's like, we're all resigning because there's been a poaching effort from this other group, corporate, blah, blah, restructure stuff. But they didn't tell me. And all of a sudden, a team of 10, there was 8 people that were all in on it. They resigned all together and they walked and left to this competitor, and they left myself and one other person behind. And when you think that you're an integral part of a team, and you think that you're important and cared for, that can really fuck with you. That really messed with my, like, any kind of self-esteem, any kind of, like little flickers of XQ that might have been happening. I was young. I thought that, yeah, like I'm pretty good at pitching. I'm like a bit explorative. But you know what? A moment like that and everything just like got wiped away. I went back into my shell. I just did the good girl shit. I like stayed in my box and just did what people expected of me because I was so scared of that change and I felt terrible. And for anyone who's gone through corporate restructures, like, yeah, it's a tough time. And then there was a time, fast forward a few years later, when I was at another big logo. This was at ANZ, and I actually found somewhere in myself the confidence to actually leave the safety of corporate life to start a business. And at this time, I talked to my boss. He's a very jovial Scottish man. I'm not going to do the accent, but I did say to him, Gordon, I need to take some leave from the business, and I need to go and like give birth to this startup idea. So I called it like my startup maternity leave. Just like I need to like go and do this. And he actually amazingly gave me 3 months of paid and unpaid leave. And at that point, I was like, yeah, cool. XQ's bubbling, like I'm, got a bit of creativity coming up. I'm feeling pretty good about my self-leadership here. Like I was ready to start testings and stuff, like making and breaking. And you can kind of see that this like grows over time. So there's the complete fear shutdown. Then there's the, yeah, okay, like exploring, everything's pretty cool. And then there's the world-changing moment that we talked about at the start. And I'm curious about what you all thought you would do. Like, I'm not supposed to do audience interaction stuff, but I won't do it. But there was many options. What we actually did was we drank a lot of wine. We cried a lot. We got on the whiteboards and we mapped out scenario planning. What happens if this thing's a month? What if it's 6 months? What if it's a year? Oh my God, what if it's forever? Like we mapped out all these different scenarios and we put a plan in place for every scenario. We then went out and spoke to all of our customers, especially the unis, and we're like, you guys are struggling, what can we help you with? Like, what do you need right now? And it turned out they needed stuff like just fun for the students. They didn't know how to have fun because they didn't know how to use Zoom. So it was like, we brought in, I guess, what we call our TV presenter, like children's TV presenter vibes into the Zoom rooms. Then we did a free hackathon for kids. I had never done an online hackathon before, but we did a free hackathon for 360 students, which was Hack the Crisis. Like, let's just come up with some ideas to like make life slightly less crap. And so then we jumped around. We've launched about 8 different products in the space of 3 weeks. I reckon 2 of them hit, one being like this global venture exchange thing. We did like a paid ticketing online event back when online events were new. We did more hackathons. And eventually Monash University came through and they're like, we would like to pay you to run a hackathon for our students because we don't know how to do it and you seem to know what you're doing. We did not know what we were doing, but we were like, thank you for your money. That's really nice. So that was another month of runway. And then every month we were able to just like eke that out a little bit further. And people seemed to like what we were doing. We ended up transferring what was a very in-person travel-based business to a digital-based business. This is very self-indulgent with pictures of my face in like news articles. My mum says it's not bragging if it actually happened. Thanks, Mum. But people seemed to like what we were doing. In fact, Atlassian actually signed up for some of our digital programming to buy scholarships on what we were putting together. And at this point, I got to say, like the XQ's lighting up, right? This is, my whole team is doing practice what we preach, what we said on the tin. Everyone's leaning in to this space. And so the stuff we do now is we do like online programs, we do intensive programs, we do hackathons and workshops, and we also have actually developed like this amazing diagnostic of XQ. So if you want to talk about that, we can do that another time. And I'm just going to share 3 real quick ways if you want to increase your own XQ today, with my few minutes left, is that you can invest in your social capital, which basically means that you increase your surface space of collaborators. So collaboration and community being one of the biggest XQ traits. Like, just invest in the people you know, like you're doing right now today. You can also just get a little more comfy with that ambiguity. You know, just think about scenario planning like we did on the whiteboards. And I think probably a big one for myself and possibly for a lot of designers who are pixel perfect thinkers, we got to reduce that perfectionism. We got to bring that hacking back, because we made 8 really terrible products and sold 2 of them. But we just had to pull something together to have something to sell. And also, you know, something that a boss at ANZ said to me a long time ago was, if I picked you out of your job and just like dropped you into a startup, could you do something? Like, could you actually help that business grow tomorrow? Like, I was stuck in what I'm going to call being a deck jockey, you know, just making decks all day long. And I don't think I could have at the time that she asked me that question. And then the final 2 points on comfortable with ambiguity is coming from the Amazon model of this 2-way door mentality. Like, if you can walk through the door and walk back out the door, you should just go through the door. Because, like, don't hold yourself up. And also, if you've got 70% of information, you've probably got enough. So just make that decision and keep moving. Like, waiting for 100% information is just not going to help you. And final tip on like increasing your own XQ is to start thinking about leading yourself first. So we started this talk thinking about how we're going to lead the world, lead change in the world. But you got to lead yourself first. And by this, I think it's about aligning your decisions to your personal values, and knowing what those are, and knowing like that every decision we make, every decision we have the privilege of making as professionals and as leaders has profound impacts. It could be choosing the caterers and making sure that that's from an amazing source. It could be like, you know, procurement decisions. It could be who you hire. We all make micro decisions every day. So I think that's important. And really just thinking about the future that you actually want to live in and taking little baby steps forward to create it. So take a minute, have a think about like if there's anything you would do tomorrow or today to increase your XQ. And I just want to say that the future is exponential, and I think all of you are too. So thank you so much for listening to my stories today. And if you want to hang out, I'm all over the internet. Always happy to have coffee or a gin and soda. I prefer the 4 pillars with the olive leaf one. That's my favourite. Right. Thank you so much.